We have a lot of cool new games coming out pretty constantly. I mean, both good and bad, but I tend to like to think about the good ones and just move along from the bad ones. But a lot of games, either you maybe played them when they came out and put it down, missed it when it originally came out, and there's a lot of good stuff back in the back catalog. We were thinking, you know what? Let's put together a list of stuff you can go back to and enjoy. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 20 legendary games worth revisiting in 2024. Starting off with number 20, it's Alien Isolation. I admit this is a tough one to go back to because it's a little terrifying, but there's no better time to return to Alien Isolation because very recently, on October 7th, Creative Assembly announced they were working on a sequel. It's been 10 years since the original came out, and it's never even been hinted at that we would get a sequel. It always seemed like it would remain this special one-and-done thing, and honestly, I don't think anybody wanted it not to have a sequel, but no one expected it to. But it is, and the original devs are making it. Everything about the conditions for the sequel looks quite good, and that makes now the perfect opportunity to try it out, or try it again because you wussed out the first time. I'm not trying to insult anybody here, but a lot of people wussed out. Like, tons of people bought the game because of the hype, but how many finished it? I don't know. It is a pretty challenging and unforgiving game, especially when you first start actually encountering the alien early on. But with perseverance, it's a game that anybody can finish. It never stops being scary as hell, though, which is one of the most impressive elements of the game. Most horror games stay scary for a while, maybe even the whole first playthrough, but the second playthrough is usually like, all right, I know what's happening. Alien Isolation manages to keep the tension high. No matter how many times you've gone through it, that alien is just so unpredictable, it'll catch you off guard sometimes. No matter how much you think you have its behavior pegged, it'll get you. Oh, it'll get you. And number 19 is Grand Theft Auto 4. GTA 6 is finally, hopefully, coming in the new year. And while you could just go back to GTA Online to get your open-world Rockstar crime fix, for me, personally, I think it's more enlightening to go back to the game that brought GTA to next gen, which was the Xbox 360/PS3 at the time. GTA 4 is a landmark game in a lot of ways. They were really trying to do something different here. It's a little slower paced, a little more character-driven. It's less intentionally fun, maybe a little more serious. Liberty City in the game is overcast and gray, not the amusement park like a lot of other ones. They really tried to bring a sense of realism to the design of the world, at least for a Rockstar game.
What you think this is, bumper cars?
It has elements of being a life sim and an open world action game. You got friends to hang out with, dates to go on, there's internet cafes and live performances to see. There's a bunch of stuff that's just there to make the world immersive. It's kind of a precursor to how immersive Red Dead Redemption 2 would be. The graphics have not really held up and the controls can feel awkward, but GTA 4 is one of the most unique and interesting games in the series. And if you don't like it, there's always episodes from Liberty City, 2 mini campaigns where he plays other characters whose story runs parallel. Just save the Ballad of Gay Tony for last because it's the best and most fun part of the entire package. And number 18 is Dragon Age Origins. We're now at the 15th anniversary of the first Dragon Age game, and with the 4th game finally just around the corner, now's a great time to go back to the game that started it all. Even if you don't care about the Veilguard, maybe you're just jonesing for another RPG hit after Baldur's Gate 3, and Dragon Age Origins is really a perfect follow-up. You will experience whiplash from the graphics. Origins is not a great-looking game. It wasn't a great-looking game back when it came out in 2009, but it was a game that brought back the class CRPG in a big way. It was BioWare going back to its roots. It's a hardcore party-based RPG with tons of moral choices to make. On the surface, it looks a lot like later Baldur's Gate games, but it's actually a lot more in line with their older games, like the first 2 Baldur's Gate games, which makes the first entry in the series very good. The story is not anything to write home about. It's mostly just something that's there to give the player something to do. The characters and all the little stories you encounter along the way are what makes origin so interesting, along with the brilliant prologues and whatever race and class you choose your main character to be, it actually completely changes how the story starts. It's criminal that no other game has borrowed this idea. It makes your character feel so friggin' distinct from the start in just a way most RPGs completely fail at. The game is still easy to get on PC and looks a lot better there compared to consoles, but it does take some getting used to because it is an ugly game. It's an all-time classic though, so, I mean, it's worth it.
He is proof that glory is within reach of us all. He has survived despite the odds.
At number 17 is Tomb Raider from 2013. Everybody's chomping at the bit to hear about whatever Crystal Dynamics is cooking up for the next Tomb Raider game. But with Netflix putting out a new cartoon based on the Survivor trilogy, why not go back to the 2013 reboot? The show directly references stuff from that game, so it's kind of billed as a sequel. Not that any of that really matters. Nobody's playing one of these things for the story, but the game holds up. It is a lot of fun. Yes, it's kind of Tomb Raider going full Uncharted, but one could argue that Uncharted was kind of a ripoff of Tomb Raider. These two series kind of have each other embedded in the respective titles' blood at this point, but Crystal Dynamics knows how to make a good game. They're pros. Even if it's a little derivative, like the game it's derivative of is derivative of it as a series. I don't really care. Like, both series are good. The mature rating, the violence, the semi-horror atmosphere, it all gives this game a unique vibe. It was also one of the first third-person shooters to have a dodge move, which everybody is doing now, and its interconnected island almost makes it feel like a Metroidvania at times, even though the actual game is very linear. The pacing is just about perfect. They're constantly introducing new tools, weapons, mixing up the scenario. Not a great story, not bad, but it's perfect for a video game. You're always doing something new, and when there's downtime, the exploration is a ton of fun. For a game that's more than 10 years old at this point, it holds up surprisingly well. At number 16 is Metro 2033 Redux. This one's for everybody that saw the trailer for Metro Awakening, got really hyped for a second before the crushing reveal was that it's a VR-only game. No shade to VR, it's just that, well, that's a much smaller market than quote-unquote gaming. VR gaming is good. Well, it can be good. Can also be bad, just like any other gaming. But it's just a smaller market. No denying that. Still, if you want to get over that soul-searing disappointment, why not go back to the game that started it all? And I mean the Redux version, not the original. The update makes a lot of small but significant improvements and changes to the game that makes it just a smoother experience, particularly if you're going to play the game on consoles. Metro is Stalker if you mixed it with Call of Duty, which probably sounds like an insult, but I'm pretty serious in saying that it's a pretty big compliment, actually. Metro has all the immersive elements of the Stalker games, and maybe even more so, while also having a much more compelling story-driven narrative. The first Metro game is really linear, but for good reason. You spend the majority of the game exploring the subways, tunnels, and all that.
Yees, I've been through worse, and I'm not giving up. What's
Alex.
your plan for the dodge?
Yes, Nikolai? The station can't survive much longer if these attacks don't stop. We must do something.
The stuff that's part of Moscow's vast transportation network, but, after a nuclear war has turned the surface into a snowy, uninhabitable hellscape. It's a bleak game, but the world building in Metro is just fantastic, and the gameplay is just really solid. If you're into FPS games with a story, there's a lot to like about the original Metro. And number 15 is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Going back to this one, it means going way back. The sequel is apparently going to come out sometime in 2025, so why not revisit the original classic? I mean, even if Bloodlines 2 is coming out, I've never seen a publisher so pessimistic about a game. It's almost like they want it to bomb. Like they could at least pretend to be enthusiastic about it. But don't let that doom and gloom get you down, because the original's still here. It's easy to get a hold of, and as long as you've got the proper unofficial patches, which actually come pre-installed with the GOG version of the game, so that's obviously the easiest way to go. It's a game that looks every bit as old as it is, like we're talking 20 years old here. but it holds up as one of the really few great adaptations of the World of Darkness role-playing game. It looks like an FPS, but it plays more like an RPG with damage numbers that can change wildly depending on how you allocate your skill points. What makes this game great is how fleshed out and interesting the setting is, too, along with a few real standout missions. It's not a perfect game. Even with all the fan patches, it's still pretty buggy, and it also does kind of fall apart in the final stretch, but there's just nothing else like it. And number 14 is Fallout New Vegas. Anytime is a good time to go back to New Vegas, but with the actually shockingly good Fallout TV show, which I will never get over, heading to New Vegas for Season 2, one more reason to put on your big iron and play some Johnny guitar. I mean, what really needs to be said about Obsidian's 2010 Fallout game? I say it all the time, Obsidian does Bethesda better than Bethesda generally. They understand what makes people like me, at least, like Bethesda games. I've certainly had people dispute that in the past, but, you know, to each their own. I think Obsidian made the best modern Fallout game. Like, it's an all-time classic, one of the best open-world RPGs of all time, with the most complex and interesting locations, some of the best characters in the entire series, obviously the best role-playing. There's so many choices that have meaningfully different outcomes, and that can end in wildly different ways. It's crazy they made the game in less than 2 years.
Had enough! You like that?
Had enough?
Well, not that surprising. It was a bug-riddled mess when it originally came out, but official and unofficial patches have mostly gotten it under control these days. Now it's an unambiguously excellent Fallout game that sometimes looks a bit like an officially licensed mod. Any new graphical elements definitely stand out compared to stuff that was in Fallout 3, but it doesn't really matter because the writing is so strong and the quest design is just some of the best out there.
I don't want no whining about old Mr. Masterson. I left my one-of-a-kind plasma cannon back at base. Can we go back for it?
And number 13 is Katamari Damacy, another 20-year-old classic, but this game, it could have come out this year and nobody would know the difference. Before the big indie boom of the 2010s, games like this were so unbelievably uncommon, and they really stick out in the collective memory. So stop me if you heard this one before. He plays the prince, the son of the king of all cosmos, went on a cosmic bender, destroyed the universe. Now you gotta roll things up on Earth and use them to make new stars. And come up with some new ideas already. Am I right? Yeah, so the bizarre presentation is what gets you in the door, but the gameplay is what makes it classic. Using twin stick controls, you guide this Katamari around grabbing little objects until you slowly get bigger and bigger. For the first levels, you're building up tiny little walls of trash, but by the end of the game, you're picking up entire continents. It's so absurd, and the little diorama levels are so much fun to explore. The music has no rival, too. I mean, there's a romantic love song that literally has the lyric, "I want to roll you up into my life." It's a romantic song about the Katamari. This and the sequel, We Love Katamari, both got re-released easily, so they're easy to get, they work correctly, and honestly, they're both highly recommended if you're looking for some goofy but addictive fun. And number 12 is Yakuza Dead Souls. And you thought the upcoming Like a Dragon Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii is the most ridiculous spin-off of all time, didn't you? No. How quickly we all forget Yakuza Dead Souls. It's not a legendary game because it's good. I mean, it's Yakuza, so you're going to have fun playing it, period. Well, at least if you like that series, and I do. But it's legendarily weird, actually. Especially back when it came out, when, depending on what you call it now, Yakuza or Like a Dragon, it wasn't nearly as goofy as it is now. Pirate Yakuza seems kind of like a natural follow-up to all the nonsense that went down in Infinite Wealth, but Dead Souls' take of Kamurocho getting invaded by undead hordes is something very different. Here's the thing, actually getting this game isn't easy because it's a PlayStation 3 exclusive. You can't get it on modern consoles, and the PS3 store is offline, so it's not even available digitally, so going back and playing it isn't that simple. Frankly, it's also not a lot of fun to play compared to some of them. It's basically a shooter that's Frankenstein onto the Yakuza combat system, and it's not unplayable. It's actually kind of weirdly fun, but also it doesn't work like it should. Anyone used to real third-person shooters are going to have to spend some time adjusting. What makes it so bizarre is that the story plays every bit of it completely straight. It is goofy as hell, but the tone is more Dead Rising 1 than full-on comedy, and somehow that makes it funnier. Listen, it's not a game I would recommend to anybody, but if you're a hardcore Yakuza fan, at least check it out because some of the stuff has to be seen to be believed. At number 11 is Wolfenstein: The New Order. With the highly anticipated Indiana Jones and the Great Circle coming soon, what better time to revisit Machine Games' first game? So New Order and indies like the Rise of the Triad remake and Shadow Warrior are where the entire retro revival kind of started. Now it seems like an amazing new retro-style FPS comes out every other week, but the New Order and the FPS landscape at the time are both very different things. Everybody kind of was playing the next Call of Duty from time to time. No disrespect to those games, but variety is the spice of life, so getting a shooter like this one, where you could just double fist 2 machine guns and sprint around the arena, blasting enemies like a madman, was an absolute breath of fresh air. There's health and armor pickups, there's secrets, it's no big deal now, but it was really refreshing back in 2014. The presentation is dead on with amazing music from Mike Gordon too, and the story is actually well told and even emotional at times. It's not as smooth to play as Doom 2016. That refines a lot of what this kind of got the ball rolling with, but it's still a great game. At number 10 is Red Dead Redemption. Yeah, 2 Rockstar games on this list, but there's a good reason for it, because after 14 years of waiting, the original Red Dead is finally coming to PC. Just being able to play the original groundbreaking game in high definition with a consistent 60 FPS is a game changer. Red Dead 2 is amazing, but it wouldn't exist without this game, and depending on who you ask, some people like the original better. It's certainly more focused, less meandering narratively, and the controls are more responsive. Now that's all by design. Rockstar very intentionally made RDR2 the way it was, but some people prefer the more gamey approach they took with the first game. It's kind of a toss-up for me because they're kind of different beasts. There is something about the first that makes me want to go back a little bit more, but I don't know that I want to say it's because it's a better game, because I'm not sure it is.
I'll bed you all down.
Still, the game really holds up, and like I said, I always really want to go back to it. I haven't been able to play it on PC, but this game was absolutely revolutionary at the time, and I think it's still one of Rockstar's best stories. If anything, it's a good game to revisit because it's shorter than Red Dead 2, but you still get an epic story. It's just in a fraction of the time. Sure, the world looks a little more washed out and barren, and the crazy attention to detail of the sequel, it's not there. But if you just want an awesome Wild West story, the original RDR is it. At number 9 is Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time Trilogy, the most recent game in the series. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown may not have set the world on fire in sales, but it was a great game and served as a reminder that, oh yeah, all the Prince of Persia games are actually pretty good, especially the Sands of Time Trilogy, which still holds up and is pretty easy to get on PC. They require a little tweaking to get right, but if you want to use a controller, you'll have to go in and manually bind the controls, but these games are still a lot of fun to play, even now. Their central gimmick is still really unique, slowing down time to get through a tricky platforming section or reversing time to undo damage and survive a deadly fall. It's a great but really simple idea that they executed really well. It's a wonder nothing else has really copied it, because it really does add a lot to the experience. All 3 games are good. The first is still the best, but the 2 sequels have their own merits. The tone of the second is needlessly edgy, but the gameplay fundamentals are still there. It's still Prince of Persia where it matters, and the third game's handling of stealth is really clever. I like how it's just expanding on the climbing and platforming elements from previous games, but now you can get the drop on enemies before getting into a fight.
convenient. A burning building filled with helpless citizens just begging for rescue.
What do you mean?
I mean, it sounds like a trap.
Ridiculous.
Is it? If I was an enraged sand god intent on killing you, and you'd already slain two of my best lieutenants, well, I'd be inclined to try a less direct approach. One that exploits your newfound compassion.
Trap or not, those people need me.
No good will come of this.
As far as game trilogies go, the quality here is remarkably consistent, even if the tone isn't. It's a quality series, it's pretty old at this point, but it mostly still holds up. At number 8 is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Almost every major Castlevania title is now playable on PC, but one is conspicuously missing, and it's this one. Yeah, there's no official way to play Symphony of the Night right now. The game that literally coined the phrase Metroidvania on PC. On PlayStation, there's a collection for the PS4 that's still playable on PS5, and on Xbox, you have to play the Xbox 360 port, which is still purchasable, even now on the Xbox store. But if you want to play the game on PC, there is no official way to do it, which is a huge shame because after the Dominus collection, it's really tempting to go back to the game that altered the trajectory of the entire franchise. For people who grew up with it, it's still the best game in the series. People who grew up with a Game Boy Advance or DS might have different opinions, but the original is still an all-time classic. It's also a must-play for anyone interested in games where you explore a large area and movement upgrades that allow you to reach previously inaccessible areas and beat up Universal movie monsters. It's not that hard of a game for how old it is, but that just makes it a game that's easy to come back to. It's just a shame that out of all the re-releases Konami has been doing lately, this is the one they haven't gotten around to. At number 7 is Tales from the Borderlands. Listen, I don't want to be too negative here and piss anyone off, but that Borderlands movie has got to be the safest of safe targets, so I'm going to come out and say that it's bad. I didn't necessarily pay for a ticket to see it, wink wink, but it's bad. I have better things to do than that. I am glad that I did not leave the house to see it. But honestly, Telltale, on the other hand, gave us one of their best games. A game that is possible to tell a good story in the Borderlands, like an actually good story in the Borderlands universe. It sounds like a terrible idea. I mean, Telltale, the Walking Dead guys, making a game based on Borderlands? Like, do those games really even have a universe to draw from? Not a consistent one, surely. It sounds like a disaster in the making, but they made it work. Hell, they did better than make it work. They made a legitimately entertaining story with endearing characters and an actually interesting and engaging story that managed to bring back Handsome Jack from Borderlands 2 in a way that makes sense and gives him a proper send-off that's both appropriate and satisfying.
What do you think? We installed enough mods for the whole base? You have any idea how expensive that would be? God, you're an idiot. No getting out of this one.
Do you ever shut up?
Well, I'll tell you what, kid. As I'm watching the life leave your body, I won't say a word.
Oh, I'll be so happy when you're gone.
Me? Gone? I'll never be gone. I'm a freaking legend, kiddo, in case you haven't been paying attention. I'm immortal.
There's one! How's that feel, huh?
No, that's not happening. Nope. Sorry. Oh, it is not gonna be that easy. No way. We're in this together, Reese.
Compared to their other games like Walking Dead and Wolf Among Us, Tales from the Borderlands is a much goofier game, but the storytelling chops are still there. It's a great game, one of Telltale's absolute best, and it still feels crazy to say that because after all these years, it's still a Borderlands adventure game spin-off. That doesn't make it not true, though.
I can't see! Believe I'm saying this, Fiona? Help!
Fiona!
Hey, what are you guys doing?
What's it look like?
At number 6 is Batman Arkham Asylum. 2024 is the 15-year anniversary of the first and maybe best game in the Arkham series. They're all very good, but Asylum came out of nowhere, swinging hard. I mean, who was Rocksteady before this game? They were nobodies. But they made Arkham Asylum and completely rewrote how stealth is supposed to work in video games.
Is running around the asylum dressed like like a bat. I know! Crazy! Stop him before he gets someone hurt. Really, it's for his own good.
Before Arkham Asylum, you were the prey, but after this game, you were the predator. They revolutionized vision mechanics. Combat system was top-notch, really, literally just one of the, 3 good variations on action. It's this, the Platinum Formula, and Dark Souls. I mean, all 3 very different things, but types of games I very much enjoy on all fronts. Everything about Arkham Asylum was revolutionary to the games industry when it came out. It's a game that was full of new, exciting ideas for everybody to steal, and it's kind of crazy how influential this series, especially the first game, might I add, really was. It's great to come back to because it's so tightly paced and it's fairly short. Now, after all of the stuff that this game does that has been adopted by other people, I'd probably feel ripped off buying a game like this now for a full price, particularly. But coming back to it, I mean, it's fantastic. You get everything you could possibly want from a Batman game in 10 hours, in and out before anything is boring. It's crazy how well this 15-year-old game still holds up, too. The fundamentals here are absolutely rock solid. Getting a copy of the game's still easy, and there's an updated remaster Return to Arkham that improves the visuals, too. Either version of the game's honestly fine. The updates don't revolutionize the game. It's just a slightly nicer looking version of an already fantastic game. And number 5 is Yees 8, Lacrimosa of Dana. Yes, that's what it's actually called. I know this probably means nothing to the vast majority of the audience, but for the few guys who care, Yees 10 is coming out soon. That's my excuse to recommend Yees 8, a game that really deserves a revisit because it's one of the best action RPGs of all time. Sure, it looks like a PS Vita game because that's basically what it is. The graphics are not going to impress anyone, but it's a great game and it's fun. You know what they make these things for. Doesn't waste any time getting the meat of it, which is exploring a desert island while whacking a whole lot of monsters with kick-ass music playing in the background. The game is like an RPG on fast forward. The ponderous starts of most Japanese RPGs just isn't there, which, like that. The beginnings of RPGs from Japan have gotten a little long for my taste over the years. I think the more limited storytelling medium of yesteryear, like Super Nintendo, for instance, kind of helped with that. Chrono Trigger is a pretty brisk RPG and handles that exactly perfectly, but that's getting off track. This gets right into the meat of it fast, stays exciting, engaging all the way through. The biggest problem is that it has a bad translation, or at least had. They did give it a completely new script now that actually makes sense. So there's not really anything negative I can say about it other than the graphics. Even for 2016, it's really unimpressive, but it's super fun and fast-paced. It's really easy to overlook the sometimes rudimentary graphics.
I will end you.
And number 4 is X-Men Origins Wolverine. Need a little more Hugh Jackman Wolverine in your life? Skip the original Deadpool and Wolverine movie, aka X-Men Origins Wolverine, and play the game adaptation, which is infinitely better. 2024 is actually the 15th anniversary of the game coming out, so even more reason. It's not an all-time classic or anything. I mean, it's not on the level of Arkham Asylum, but as a game that lets you cut loose and do Wolverine, it's very good. The M rating lets you go carte blanche with all the hapless mooks. It's one thing to see it in a movie, but it's another to actually get to play as Wolverine where it actually works like this. It's entertaining as hell. It takes some wild turns too. Anything that has to do with the actual story of the movie kind of sucks. But when the developers are free to do whatever they want, they really go all out. It's still a 2009 Activision movie tie-in game, so it can only get so far, but is absolutely worth revisiting, just to remind yourself how ridiculously violent it is.
Targets contained near Lab 2. All units converge. This is Viper 16 Tracy. 3-1 and 3-2 are on the way.
And number 3 is Warhammer 40k, Dawn of War 2. There's a lot of Warhammer out there for people who picked up Space Marine 2 and want more grim darkness in their lives, but for this entry, let's talk about the game turning 15 this year. It's still one of the best 40k games ever. Both Dawn of War games are great, but 2 is an entirely different beast from this one. Rather than being a straight RTS, the sequel is more of a tactical RPG. You can command a small squad of Space Marines and complete missions, then return to base, change your loadouts, level up, blah blah blah. Much more story-based affair, and each Space Marine is a character.
Captain Davian Thule and a handful of Space Marines lead the raw recruits defending these worlds. Now, another Space Marine joins this desperate battle. A newly promoted commander, ready to lead in our darkest hour. You are this Space Marine.
Take the base game where you fight the Tyranids, just like in Space Marine 2, and get the 2 expansions. You got more game than you're going to know what to do with. The multiplayer was great. The single-player stuff is excellent. And if you're into tactical games in 40k, this is a perfect game for revisiting in 2024.
Destination ready. And also ready. Moving out. Go ahead. Devastators at your command.
And number 2 is Silent Hill 3. Now that Silent Hill is actually relevant again, thanks to the Silent Hill 2 remake, there's no better time to go back and play some of the other great games in the series. Silent Hill 1 is difficult to go back to. Silent Hill 2, there's not a whole lot of reasons to return directly after playing the remake, because the script's pretty much identical. Not a big change as far as a lot of the content in terms of story, but it's still very good. But maybe Silent Hill 3 is probably the best choice. Just be sure you get the fan updates and you're good. Silent Hill 3 is a very different beast from the second game, but it's still really good. It holds up better than the interesting but flawed Silent Hill 4. How you play it is essentially the same as the other games, but the story is what makes it so different. It's a full-blown scare delivery system. It's a creepy game, is what I'm saying, and has some disturbing as hell segments.
Is this a dream? It's gotta be.
Even though the actual plot is a little more straightforward in the second game, there's a lot of stuff that goes barely explained. It's a strange, creepy game that's shockingly good looking for something from 2003. And finally, at number 1, I mentioned it a little while ago, and I bet you're thinking, that's an old game. And you're talking about going back to another kind of old game, but not super old, in the same genre, the Japanese RPG. Maybe let's talk about the actual Chrono Trigger? Oh yes, you'd better believe that I will take any chance to talk about Chrono Trigger. So let's honor the late great Akira Toriyama and the recent release of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, and say what better time than now to go back to one of the greatest JRPGs of all time. So Chrono Trigger's old as hell. It's from 1995. Next year, it'll be 30 years old. So we're going way back with this one. But it's a game that feels surprisingly modern in a lot of ways. It's inspired countless indie RPGs. So many games want to be the next Chrono Trigger, but nobody's really gotten there. And not for lack of trying, it's just that the original is that good. I would offer this little hint to everybody who's trying to do this. Don't make a game where you make a story that services the mechanics. Just make a good story and make it play like Chrono Trigger. That's all you got to do. This is my problem with Sea of Stars for the most part. It's really just like there's no real stakes. They're just like, oh, here's a reason that you have to do Chrono Trigger type battling. And don't get me wrong, it does that real well. But what makes this game so special, it's not just the fantastic artwork or the legendary soundtrack, it's the stakes and the pacing. So in a world where every RPG takes forever and a half to get going, Chrono Trigger wastes no time. That's exactly why I brought it up a minute ago, and it's such a good thing about this game. And it's not just the beginning of the game. It's bouncing you around at lightning speed to new things, introducing new places, new times, new characters. But it doesn't break your neck with whiplash like, let's say, I don't know, any new Marvel or Star Wars. It is perfectly paced. It creates character stakes and world stakes, so you want to keep going not only for the world, but also for your characters. Like, each character has their own little arc that obviously you don't play as all of them, but you can kind of complete them by, doing their stuff. But it's not so pronounced like it is like, here's the arc for this character. They're kind of integrated in the main story too, which isn't a 100-hour monster RPG. You can finish this game in about 20 hours, and that's a huge positive. It's not like the game shortchanges you on content. It goes by faster than your average RPG, and it doesn't try to milk anything. It just gives you the best stuff constantly. It's beginner friendly because it's not super mechanically complex, but it's really inventive in the way that the stock turn-based battle system really usually wasn't during the 2 or 3 decades that it was a prominent RPG thing. It just never gets boring. This game is not a boring game, period. It's also a game everybody should play at least once, whether you're into JRPGs or not, because it's one of those perfect games that comes from a bunch of guys that are just at the top of their game. They're really firing on all cylinders and having a blast doing it. There's just something very special about this game. If you plan on getting it off Steam, get the Pixel Demake mod. It takes all the jarring HD assets out and replaces them with stuff that looks a bit more natural. Other than that, it's a pretty fine re-release. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.